Well, hey, everybody. Welcome back. Another episode of Early Childhood Chats. Andy Rozak with you as always, and joined today by Claire Lerner, one of our favorite guests on the podcast, coming back to us. Thank you for coming back, Claire.
Happy to
Appreciate your
be.
time and attention. For those folks who didn't join us on the first one, shame on you. Go back and listen to Claire's first podcast with us. But Claire, can you give a little introduction about yourself and what the kind of work you do?
Sure. So I'm a clinical social worker, and I've been in the field of early childhood, which now really extends to about age 10 at this point in my work. I started with 0 to 3, and slowly that's crept up as I see more and more families and their kids grow, and I grow with them. So I'm a clinician who is in the trenches with families every day, helping them solve their most vexing child rearing challenges. I also do a lot of preschool consultation where I'm in preschools, I'm observing in classrooms, I'm collaborating with parents and teachers to understand the root cause of whatever the challenge might be and to collaborate to figure out how we all are going to support the child to help them thrive, whatever the challenge might be.
Well, and I love Claire. She was with us down in the Virgin Islands. She's been with us in Puerto Rico. She'll be at the 2026 Head Start East Conference in Puerto Rico in March. So we're excited to have her back on the island with everybody. But really practical solutions. And these are tough questions, Claire. I mean, somehow you've got this great toolbox with all these magical tools in there. And what I love is it's not just one strategy, it's a plethora of all your experience kind of tied together over the years. And talking about really how do we get to those underlying things that are driving behavior or making these situations very challenging.
Yeah, so that's a result of the fact that day after day, I am, as I said, in the weeds with parents, right? They're coming to me with the range of issues, tantrums, inflexibility, power struggles, feeding issues, potty learning challenges, aggression, sibling rivalry, like the full range of issues that come up for most families at some point. And because every child and family is unique, what I'm doing is not just giving one size fits all approaches, because we know that just doesn't work, right? Because we're dealing with human beings and we're dealing with individual systems that are each family I see. And so it's never like, here are the 5 steps to get your kid to stop having tantrums when you go to Target and they can't get what they want, or how to get them to sleep at night. This is me really putting together the pieces of the puzzle, trying to figure out the child's development, their temperament, all the environmental factors, changes in their world, stressors, all the things that come together to produce the behavior, right? So what I'm doing is helping guide families through the detective work, so we don't just come up with behavioral responses, right? When the child hits their sibling or won't stay in their room at night, we're really trying to figure out what is driving that behavior. What are the underlying issues at play that are making it difficult for this child to do this task, to manage their big emotions and their bodily impulses, so that we can come up with solutions that actually address the underlying obstacles and the underlying issues, which is when we get really positive, sustainable change. And so because of that, in my writing, I'm just doing it through cases. I'm never saying like, here's the solution when when your child melts down in the preschool parking lot because grandma came to pick her up instead of dad, who she was expecting, right?
Right.
Where I'm showing the whole process of how we figure out what is the root cause for that child in that moment and what is going to help her, because it looks very different for different kids in different situations.
Well, they always say like parenting doesn't come with an instruction manual, which, I wish it did. But I will say, I think your books and especially your newsletter, it's pretty darn close. And I've said it before, I'll say it again. I really think, Why is My Child in Charge? Wonderful book that you authored. It really should be required reading for all new parents and all early childhood staff. It's phenomenal. But you've been busy. Another new book is coming out, Big Reactors, thinking about not just being little adults or little people, but sometimes these kids go from 0 to 60 like that. And I think that's kind of what you've coined the term here of big reactors, right?
Yes. So my first book, Why is My Child in Charge, is, I would say, a general book about the typical challenges that come up for most kids in some way, shape, or form in the early years, right? And that book was also case based, or is case based, and really focuses on key mind shifts I find that are critical, that help parents get on the path to be the loving limit setters their kids need them to be, right? Like, hence the title, Why is My Child in Charge? Because most families who come to see me, once I dig in deep and I understand what the dynamics are that are vexing to the parent and causing a lot of challenge and chaos and stress in the family, is because the child is in charge. You know, what time they go to bed, how many books they're going to get, what time they go to preschool, like what they're going to eat. Like, parents have ceded control because the power struggles have become so challenging. They're just, as one dad said, taking the parenting path of least resistance and giving in, but then these dynamics persist. So that book is all about how to parent without power struggles and how to support, validate, give kids choices and agency and all that good stuff, while also setting the limits and boundaries that help them learn to adapt and to deal with life's limits, right? To go to bed on time, to eat more healthy foods and junk foods, to manage when you can only have 2 episodes of Paw Patrol and not 10 episodes of Paw Patrol, and so forth. This next book, which is called Big Reactors, Practical Strategies for Parenting Highly Sensitive Children, is is very specifically about this group of kids who have this temperament trait that we think of, or that is known as high sensitivity. So these are kids who, like, they're not doing this on purpose, and their parents didn't make them this way. This is just a constitutional, biologically based temperament trait of high sensitivity, meaning that the way they register their feelings and experiences in the world is very deep and intense. So, from a sensory perspective, that may mean that noises they're more reactive to. They process them, they get distracted by them. Clothes may feel uncomfortable to them because, even from a tactile perspective, everything feels more intense. And there's also a big emotional component where these kids, like, the slightest change can produce a huge reaction, where, because they're so tuned in to the world around them, they notice everything. So changes can be very challenging for them. They get triggered more easily into upset when things don't go the way they want when they want it, because their systems are processing things so deeply that they get overwhelmed more quickly, right? So these are the kids, for example, who have a really hard time with Disney movies. And, like, I hear all the time from parents, we can't watch a Disney movie because they're hyper tuned in to the underlying issues at play that they can't make sense of, right? Like, they see The Lion King, they understand that Simba feels responsible for his dad's death. That is a very overwhelming concept to wrap your brain around as a 4, 5, 6 year old. So what happens is their systems, their brains never turn off. They're constantly trying to make sense of things. They don't just move on. So, like, some kids will see The Lion King and they'll think it's great, Scar, and there's action and it's exciting. And that's what they process. And then you've got the group of kids where they're crying at the end and very disturbed by the fact that a child could feel responsible for their parents' death, right? That kind of intensity. So these kids are amazing. They're super insightful. They're super passionate. They're often extremely empathetic. They're very deeply feeling kids. And in order to cope with a world that can feel overwhelming, right? Because it's like they don't have a filter or an off button, they get overwhelmed more easily, and therefore you get more challenging behaviors, right? Some more anxiety. They can become very controlling. They want everything. Like, a way to feel in control of your world is to, as a lot of my parents describe it when they first come to see me like we have a fascist dictator in our home. I have a we have a master manipulator, right?
Yeah.
My child sucks all the oxygen out of our family. These are very typical parenting reactions, and they come by honestly because these are big reactors. And until you fully understand the root cause, as I've just explained it, it's parents are really frustrated and angry and annoyed. Like everyone else is running into the preschool. Look how fun it is. Why are you clinging to me for dear life? Right?
Yeah.
Because that kid goes in and doesn't say, oh my God, 5,000 magnetiles that I can never have at home. This is awesome. And they run in and start playing. These kids get to the new classroom and they're like, what is this place? And who are these people? And are they going to be nice? And am I going to make friends? And am I going to know what to do here? So you see, they get stuck more easily. So there's a whole constellation of behaviors that these kids struggle with, right? Control, being inflexible, being perfectionistic, having a hard time losing, very low frustration tolerance, because the second they feel out of control, they are triggered into upset. So the book is all cases about these kids, this group of kids who have this temperament trait. Of course, they're all different in their own way, but it's helping parents who have these kids or teachers who have these kids in their care understand what makes them tick and actually what they need, because it's often very counterintuitive for these kids. And, we can get more into that, but that's what the book is about.
Well, and you think, gosh, you get two, three, four of these in a classroom. Oh my goodness, the poor teacher can really have their hands full. And we all talk about the importance of ratio and all this and that, but you know what? If one teacher is being sucked in to do some one-on-one, the ratio kind of goes out the window pretty quick, doesn't it?
Yeah. And that is a very important factor that we have to put on the table, because it we need to come up with strategies that are actually workable, right? Like a lot of times you go to a presentation or you read an article, and in theory, the intervention sounds awesome. But in practice, when you're responsible for 12, 13, 14, 3 or 4 year olds, it's just not viable, right? To do that kind of one-on-one, because as you say, that takes you out of ratio. So that's a lot of what I'm doing in my consultation in preschools, is figuring out what is the art of the possible in this classroom. So, for example, we create safe spaces in the classroom that have boundaries, that are loving, but that enable containment. Because if you have a child who is so triggered, right, because whatever you were giving for snack was not what they expected, or they go to the block center and the block center is closed, it's at maximum capacity and they have to pivot and choose another center. For some of these kids, that's very triggering to them. And at the end of the day, they're human beings. Like, we can't make them not be upset, right? So we're going to validate. Yes, I know it's really upset. You really, really wanted to go to the block center and your feelings are really, really big. And I totally get it. It's really disappointing. We're never trying to talk kids out of their feelings. But then the question is, what comes next, right? So we have to come up with a strategy that enables the teacher to be in charge, even if it means creating a boundary and saying, I'm going to give you a cozy corner break. There's tons of sensory stuff in there that you can use if you need to hit or kick, or bite, right? Like, there's chewies in there that are safe that they can use. Of course, if you're doing that, they obviously have to be per child so that we're not spreading germs. But we come up with strategies that enable the caregiver to be the loving, connected caregiver they need to be, while also having the tools to set the clear limits and boundaries that are critical. Because that's often what's missing, right? Is like, we've read all about collaborative problem solving and, validating and giving kids choices, and that's all great until it doesn't work. Until you
Right,
say, you have
right.
two great choices. We can't do blocks, but you can go to housekeeping, or you can go to, vehicles, And the kid's like, no. And they're running back to the block section and now they're throwing blocks, right? We need a tool for the caregiver to stay in charge. And that can be very tough. That can be tough to figure out, but it's a critical process to go through in classrooms, because when a child is triggered into upset like that, and the teachers and the adults in the room do not have the ability to contain unwanted or potentially unsafe behavior, that's when things really go off the rails, because the teachers feel impotent. That's a terrible feeling as a parent or a caregiver. And that's what's detrimental to the system. It's not setting an appropriate limit and boundary if it's loving. So it's not like, that's it, go to the corner and think about what you did wrong. No, like, we're not going back to the dark ages. That's shaming. That's not helpful. That's not developmentally appropriate. It's harmful. What isn't harmful is saying, I know you're so upset, your body is acting before your brain, and I'm going to help you do what your body needs to do in a safe way. I'm your helper. You guide them to that safe space that has a boundary with lots of tools and things they can use to purge themselves so that they can rejoin the classroom.
Well, and I always get, I don't know what the right adjective is here, concerned, or I guess concern might be it. I don't, you get concerned that, like, you have one child that's doing this behavior. The other children aren't necessarily just sitting there ignoring it, right? And if they start to kind of see, oh, well, little Johnny's doing A, B, and C and getting all this extra attention or getting what he wants or she wants, boy, that kind of goes down a dark path too, doesn't it?
Well, Andy, it's such a good question. Um, and here's my thought process. Okay. So if they're watching, and this happens in families too. I hear this all the time. Right now, the sibling is doing it because they see the older one getting all the attention. So what I say to myself is, what's at play here? And often what they're looking for is the same outcome the other child is getting, right? All the attention, or he's a squeaky wheel, so he always gets his way and he gets to be the line leader every time because he makes such a fuss about it that the teachers just are worn down and they're like, fine, you can be the line leader, right? Well,
Right.
I'm going to try that because I want to be the line leader. Okay. So I say to myself, then what's the antidote to that? It's not letting it work. And that's for both children, right? Because our job as caregivers is to help children learn how the world works and learn how to be a good citizen, learn how to manage when they can't get what they want when they want it. And it's especially hard for these big reactors. That is a truth. And it's harder for the caregivers because you might say that to one kid, I know you love being the line leader, but today your job is to be the caboose. And they're like, no problem. I mean, those are the kids that make you look so good, right? They're more adaptable. But with big reactors, what you're going to often get is doubling down and upping the ante. And if at home they've learned that works, they're going to, of course, also try it at school. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's vexing and frustrating and maddening to the caregivers, but that's not like a bad kid or a misbehaving kid. That's a kid trying to get what they want, which is part of their DNA, and that's being strategic, not
Yeah. And
manipulative.
that's a learned behavior, really, isn't it? I mean,
Right. And that's we're raising our kids, right, to be strategic, to know what they want, to go for what they want, if what they want is healthy and what they need. In this case, wanting to be the line leader every day, nothing wrong with wanting that. It's never the want that's the problem. It's that they don't need it. Like, they can learn to cope if the boundary is set and they have the opportunity to learn. But if they get their way every time, they're not going to learn that lesson, and that tactic is going to be reinforced. Like, you can't blame them.
yeah.
And the other kid is watching. But if you do this instead, now I'm the teacher and you're my my 3 or 4 year old, and you are like, you run in front and you barrel over the other kids and they're all screaming, it's not your turn, and all the chaos ensues. And now I'm the teacher and I say, Andy, I know you love being the line leader. I totally feel you. I totally feel you. You love it. And you wish you could be the line leader every day. And in our classroom, we take turns. So you have two great choices. You can go and be the caboose, or if you can give them another job, great. It could be anything. Like, you can carry this bag, give them some efficacy and some agency for sure. But if you don't hold the limit, you're in danger zone for all of the reasons I've just explained. And if the child can't, they dig in their heels, say, no problem, I'll be a helper. And you guide them to do something else. And if they have a total meltdown, you say, I know you're so upset, your whole body feels out of control, and you give them the space. That's where ratio issues become challenging. So in some programs, like taking it to the nth degree, we can either give that child a cozy space break. If there's enough bandwidth, one person stays with them while the class goes outside, and then they join them when they're ready. In some of my programs, that's not an option. There's not enough manpower in the classroom. And then we set up a safe space in like the main office, but it's not shaming. It's not like you're going to the principal. It's like, here's our safe space where you can calm while our class goes outside. So like, in this context, I can't anticipate all the yes buts that your audience is saying right now.
Right.
But that's the idea, is because what happens then is, if there is no boundary, there's no opportunity for the child to learn to cope. Teachers are stressed and not liking that child very much, which also has its own set of negative consequences for everybody. And the children watching are seeing that this is a successful strategy if you want to be the line leader or the snack helper or the person who's always, sharing first and sharing time, whatever the case may be. But if that child sees that it's not working, and that child isn't getting his way all the time and being entitled, right, and getting things other kids aren't getting, they're much less likely to emulate that behavior.
Well, it makes sense. I mean, there's a fine line between like incentivizing some of this and then dealing with it, I guess, right? So, it's interesting to think we're recording this now in the fall. Back to school is happening. A lot of big reactions happening as you transition to new classrooms or new teachers or have new kids in your class. What are some of the common things the themes you're seeing as parents are struggling with this, teachers are struggling with this? What are some of those kind of back to school challenges that you're seeing out there?
Well, when it comes to back to school, the biggest issue parents are coming to me with now are the kids who are hesitant and who say they don't want to go to school, and for whom mornings are really, really challenging. And in fact, with a lot of these kids, it's the transition that's the challenge. Once they're at school and they've made the transition, most of these kids thrive. They love it. It's that space of having to move from home to school. And what happens in many cases is parents understandably are upset by that, and they get stuck with the child. They do what feels right, especially in this age of gentle parenting that we're in. So they're sitting with their kids, they're leaning in, talk to me about this. They're going through a whole list of problem solving. They're going deep into feelings. And I either hear these stories or I see video or hear audio that my family send me. And counterintuitively, what I find is that actually less is more in that moment.
Mm.
That going down that rabbit hole just gets the child often stuck more. A lot of times they're even saying things that they don't even really feel, like, I'm scared of school. They're mean to me there. When in fact, we know from talking to teachers and really understanding what's happening with the child there, it's not happening, but the child feels like they have to produce an answer or a reason, hoping that their parent will say, fine, you don't have to go to school, because that's what they want, right? They want to stay home in their comfort zone. Nothing wrong with wanting it. The question is, what do they need? That's really the intersection of my work, is figuring out, yes, the child wants this, or this. But in a lot of cases, it's not what they need. They're going to want 40 books at bedtime. They need three, right?
Right.
They're
Yep.
going to want to stay in their comfort zone at home. What they need is lots of great time at home, cuddling, sharing, connecting. And they also need to go to school, right? So for this challenge of separation, what I actually find writ large, of course, it's a case by case basis, but is saying something like this: Charlie, I know it's really hard to go from home to school. I totally get that. I feel the same way. Sometimes going to work, I feel you. And we're going to school as a have to. So I'm going to help you move through this. This is in the heat of the moment.
Yeah.
And we can talk later about all the things you're thinking, and we can problem solve to help make going to school more comfortable. Because almost always what happens is the parent tolerates the upset. The child's, kicking, screaming in the car all the way to school. I don't want to go. I want to stay home with you, or I want to stay home with grandma, or whatever the case may be. And then they find out from the teacher, who texts them 20 minutes later saying he was upset for 1 minute and he's happy as a clam. So by the time they come home, when the parent says, let's talk about it, I know going to school has become really hard. A lot of times the kids are like, huh? And they just move on.
Yeah.
But if they don't, then you talk about it and you problem solve and you come up with a plan, right, for the morning that helps them adapt. But what you don't want to do is convey in some way, shape, or form that like school is a choice and try and convince them to agree to want to go to school. That's when things really go off the rails, because the child totally picks up on the fact that this limit is dependent on their agreement. Like, come on, don't you want to go to school? They have the best playground. Or don't you want to see your best friend Kyle? And you know what they say when you're trying to convince them? I don't like Kyle anymore. He's
Right.
not my friend. I
Right.
hate school. I hate that playground. They don't have better art supplies. I want to go to my old school. Like, they will just bring out anything to show you that you're not right. They're not going to be convinced. It's just fodder for a fight for them. And so these are a lot of these insights that I've gained over many, many years of seeing these patterns and figuring out, often counterintuitively, what the child needs and how, in this age of gentle parenting, what does gentle parenting really look like? It's not helpful for a child to go down that rabbit hole at a time when they need to cope and adapt, right? And actually moving them on is what's most loving. So there's a lot of these insights I've had, that I share throughout the book. Of course, always cautioning it's not a one size fits all approach.
Well, and especially as a parent, like, look, we'd love to gentle parent, for 12 hours here, but it's 7 a.m. I got to get to work. I got to get you to school or childcare by 8 a.m. We got a limited time to get people up and get dressed and get breakfast and get on the road and avoid all that traffic. And, now's not the time to sit down and have the Geneva Conventions here or something, right? So,
Exactly. And that's not being harsh or mean.
right,
A
right.
lot, like, it reminds me, this dad told me this great story about how he had taken his child to a fair. The child, there was a big bouncy house, okay, that the child wanted to go into, but he got very stuck on wanting, for some reason, to wear the dad's socks, but the dad had to wear his socks, so that wasn't going to work. And the child just, like, just dug in his heels. And the dad said he spent like literally 20 minutes, like, negotiating, doing collaborative problem solving, trying to bring his child along. And then at some point he just said, I'm going to go in. You can watch if you want. You can join when you're ready. And he just went. And 2 minutes later, the kid was jumping in the bouncy house, having the best time. Like, I hear stories like that all the time. Same thing with getting kids out of preschool. Sometimes by the time they get there, especially for these intense kids, then they throw all their energy into adapting to the program. And then when someone comes to pick them up, it's another disruption for them, and they melt down. And I've got parents who are like bringing books to read to their child and bringing 5 different snacks and all sorts of things to try and convince the child to be happy about leaving school. that's when often those things go off the rails because it's never enough. Child's like, I didn't want that book. You should have bought a different book. I didn't want that snack. Or they're hiding under the table. You know what mostly they need is, they go in and they say, Michaela, I know it's really hard to leave school. You love school. It's so great. And it's time to leave. So you have two great choices. You can walk to the car on your own if you want to be in charge of your body, or I'll be a helper. And you just move. A lot of times it's really about showing empathy, not trying to convince them to be happy about whatever limit you're setting, and move them through it lovingly.
Well, I mean, it's good advice. And again, everybody kind of struggles with, where's that line? Where do I spend the time? Where do I not? Where is it helpful? Where is it actually hurtful? And it's again, there's no, no real easy answers, but I'm so happy that you're out there as a resource. We've always, loved having you on the podcast. I got to tell you, like, we absolutely love having you in person at these events because the feedback from the audience, the interactions with the audience, the questions that you get from the audience, I mean, it's phenomenal. And the way that you skillfully address those and give everybody some really concrete, grounded tools and tips, it's been awesome to see. And I can't thank you enough. Really excited about the new book. Really excited about having you down in Puerto Rico in March. How can folks follow your work? How can folks stay up to date? If you don't have Claire's newsletter in your inbox, you got to get that, right? I mean, you got to sign up today. It is a long newsletter. I've said that before, but I read every single word. It is amazing, the anecdotes that she shares, and it's all grounded in real world stuff, which I absolutely love.
Yeah, well, thanks for that plug. I do put a lot of heart and soul into that, and I am trying to chunk them more because I tend to feel like I have to put in everything but the kitchen sink because I have parents in my head saying yes, but, and I'm like,
Yeah,
oh, I have
right.
to address that yes, but, like, what happens if my child won't do this and what? So I'm getting better at it. I'm sending out two a month now, so I can tell more stories in less overwhelming format. So you'll see that in the upcoming newsletters. It's free. I am telling stories of my work in the trenches, and the roadmap to success so that readers can then take those key insights and steps and adapt them to their family, right? Because I'm very clear that, like, just because this worked for this family doesn't mean it's going to work for yours, but pieces of it may, and it gives you sort of, again, the roadmap for how you might apply that to your unique child and family. So definitely it's free. You should sign up for the newsletter. You can do all of this really from my website. There's a tab at the top for my content. There's the newsletter. There's my entire library of over 150 blogs. I have a membership now that gives you access to all the blogs and a live monthly Q&A. That's been really popular where people can come on and ask their unique questions and get more personalized answers. And then you can follow me on Instagram. I post a lot, and it's all from the trenches. It's not theoretical. It's all like in the weeds. This is what happened. My child's negotiating me to death. What do I do? Like, I'm addressing real life in the weeds issues. So Instagram is Lerner Child Development, and my website is Lerner Child Development. So it's easy to find me.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Claire. It's always great to connect with you. Congratulations on the new book. Look forward to seeing you with a signed copy in Puerto Rico, if not sooner.
Yes.
And thank you all for listening today. Hope you enjoyed the podcast. Certainly love to have Claire, and I'm sure we'll do some live stuff in March from Puerto Rico as well. So you'll probably be there on the island, either hopefully in person with us, but if not, we'll be covering the event on the channel here as well. So for Early Childhood Chats podcast, Andy saying thank you very much, and we will see you on the next podcast.